We are ready and we are live, so I'll go ahead and kick us off. So my name is Mackenzie Cantrell. I happen to serve in the state legislature, but I am also the proud employment law attorney at Kentucky Equal Justice Center. We are a multi-issue poverty law organization, and the purpose of tonight's event is part of my job, which is in the Employment Law Project. The Employment Law Project at Kentucky Equal Justice Center educates, advocates, and litigates on behalf of Kentucky's workers. And we have a really exciting program for you tonight, and we welcome you to Rebuilding Our Commonwealth, and specifically what that means for Kentucky workers. We know that government investment in people and in our economy, investing in workers who are making high wages, who are highly skilled, who are going to be trained to be safe in the workplace, who are going to be able to go home and take care of their families, is what's best for our workforce, our economy, our safe communities, healthy communities, and our society generally. So we're really thrilled tonight to be joined by someone who also believes those things, and that is Congressman John Yarmuth from Kentucky's 3rd Congressional District. He's not just Congressman Yarmuth, he is Chairman Yarmuth. He is chairman of the House Budget Committee, where he has taken the lead on investment in Kentucky families with along with President Biden. And Congressman Yarmuth, I'll let you get us started off, but how can we, we've talked about the, we're already starting to see the investment and positive changes from the American Rescue Plan Act. And now we're shifting toward the next big investment in our people and our economy, which is the infrastructure plan that's being negotiated in Congress right now. So tell us more about that.
Well, thanks, Mackenzie, and thanks for having me as part of this program. Thanks for all you do, and Frankfurt and other ways to make this a better society. It's an honor to serve with you in public office, and thanks to all of you who are engaged in similar ventures. I see my friend John Rosenberg there, and from Prestonsburg, and boy, what a champion he has been in so many ways. And all of you again, Bill Londgren, I see you again. Let me start by saying that I was told that I should speak for 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I'm going to speak, and however long it takes, it'll take. Let me say one thing, and that is that one of the things I'm most excited about now that we have a new administration, other than the fact that we've gotten rid of Donald J. Trump, is that we have, because of Joe Biden and because of a Democratic majority in the House and sort of a majority in the Senate, we have flipped the switch on the way we think about the relationship of the federal government to the people of the United States. And this is a really important shift in mentality. Now, I'll put it two ways. One is that for the last several decades, probably as long as I can remember, but certainly 50 or 60 years, whenever we thought about what the federal government's responsibility is in a particular area, the first question we always asked was, what can we afford to do? What can we afford to do, and what are we willing to tax the American people to do? That's the exact wrong. It's the opposite opposite of what we should be doing, and what we are doing now. What we're doing now is we're saying the first question is, what do we need to do to best serve the American people? What do our constituents, what do the American people need? And after we've answered that question, we say, okay, how do we find the resources to do that? And the resources aren't always money, but to a large extent, it is money from the federal government. But shifting the mentality on that score alone is a monumental change for this country and the way we in the the federal government react with our citizens. I've developed a friendship with a woman named Stephanie Kelton, who is a, excuse me, who is the author of a book called The Deficit Myth. And Stephanie's an economist, and she is an advocate of something called modern monetary theory. And modern monetary theory holds that if you are a country with a sovereign currency, which we are, and we spend and we borrow in our own currency, then the only thing that constrains our ability to spend money is the inflationary effect of what we would spend. So you can't put more money into the economy than it can absorb. Otherwise, prices go up and you get all sorts of adverse effects. But, and I'm not going to go into this too much, but if you want to have a great economic book, read. It's called The Deficit Myth that Stephanie Kelton wrote, and it will change the way you've thought about a lot of things all your life, and in a positive way. But one of the things she says is, we have $28 trillion in debt, national debt. She says, don't think of that as $28 trillion in debt. Think of it as this is the entire amount that the federal government has invested in its people over its history, minus taxes. And when you think of debt that way, that $28 trillion was money that the federal government injected into the economy over 230 years. That's exactly what it is, minus however much we took back in taxes. And that's important because more people today are thinking about this in a different way, saying, hey, we have the capacity, we can print as much money as we want. We can put as much money in the economy as we want, as long as the investments are smart, as long as they're productive investments, and as long as they don't cause inflation. And that's the attitude we took, first of all, with the American Rescue Plan. And it's definitely the attitude we're taking now with the American Jobs Plan and the American Family Plan, even though we're still arguing over whether we should pay for it and how we should pay for it. The fact is, we really don't have to pay for it. It's the combined initiative of the Jobs Plan and the Families Plan is about $4 trillion. It would be spent over 8 years. Most people, including the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, who is a Republican appointee, say we have what we call the fiscal space to do that. We can put that money into the economy without a threat of serious inflation. But going back to the American Rescue Plan, what we did there was recognize that virtually, if you wanted to try and assess any individual citizen, any individual business, any individual state and local government as to how much damage they incurred through the pandemic, you would set up an enormous bureaucracy that would just kind of get totally swamped and sinking in the mud of bureaucracy. So the idea was, we assumed that everybody suffered. Every business suffered, every individual suffered, and every state and local government suffered. So we appropriated $1.9 trillion to get people back on their feet, get businesses back on their feet, stabilize state and local government budgets. And that money is being put into the economy now. I'm sure most of you have followed it. Kentucky state government in Kentucky got $2.1 billion. Here's the amazing number as far as I'm concerned. Every congressional district throughout the country, on average, got $900 million in disposable income just from the $1,400 per person checks. That's an astounding injection of stimulus into the economy, and something that was incredibly helpful to the vast majority of American families. Yeah, some families probably could have gotten by without the $1,400 check. I admit that, no question. But the vast majority of the people put that to good use, and that money's going into the economy. Beginning in a couple of weeks, on July 1st, every child in this country, depending on your income, up to a certain level of income, but every child will get a $300 or $250 a month child tax credit check. That, depending on your age, it's under 6, it's a little more than 6 to 17. But if you have 4 kids, you're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 a month, every month for 6 months. And the estimate is this will bring half of the kids now living in poverty out of poverty. It's an amazing injection of help for the American family. Again, Kentucky got 2.1 billion. The governor and the General Assembly have been working on an agreement on how to invest that money. Mackenzie knows about this, about half of it so far. A lot of it's going in Kentucky to water systems to make sure that every citizen in this Commonwealth has access to safe, quality drinking water. Seems like a fundamental obligation of government. And the Louisville Metro got $390 million. $390 million. It's an enormous amount of money to do things that the city of Louisville Metro decides that it needs to get done. A great deal of money went to education. Jefferson County Public Schools got about $400 million. And now allows them to make their schools safer and healthier, and to create programs that will help the kids catch up for the education that they've lost. And every school system in the Commonwealth got money. Every state, every county got money. Every small city got money, regardless of the size. So it was an enormous help. So now we're on to next step 2. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that because of my position on the budget committee, as the chairman of the budget committee, my name is on that bill, the American Rescue Plan. I am the primary author, and I couldn't be more proud to have my name on something that made life better for so many people across this country. And we're going to do it again. So now we're working on the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan. The American Jobs Plan is what is kind of conveniently known now as the infrastructure bill. And it includes a lot of money for infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports, water systems, broadband, airports, all sorts of things like that. But it also includes what we call human infrastructure. So one of the things it does is invest hundreds of billions of dollars in elder care, because we know that's an important part of our infrastructure. It's the foundation that allows people to live fruitful lives and productive lives. So that's what the Republicans don't want to pass, that part of it. Then they also don't want to pass a lot of what the provisions in the jobs plan that relate to climate change. So there's a lot of money to support electrified vehicles, charging stations across the country, those types of things. And the great news is these are all things that are going to create jobs. That's why it was named the American Jobs Plan and not the American Infrastructure Plan, because the idea was to create jobs. And so right now, as you probably heard, there are negotiations going on to try and get a bipartisan approach, at least to the hard infrastructure, the kind of the 19th century perspective on infrastructure. And we'll see if we can get an agreement on that. But we're proceeding in the House and the Senate with the same process that we used to pass the American Rescue Plan, which is called reconciliation. It avoids the filibuster in the Senate and allows us to pass something with 51 votes, 50 votes of Democrats and the vice president. So we're working on that now. The American Families Plan is, I think, the piece of legislation that will be the most transformative in many, many years, if not our entire history. Because what it does is invest in things like childcare, invest things like what I think is the most important thing we can do for our country right now, which is to provide free early childhood education for every child. This is 2 years of free early childhood education, pre-K, which I think will be transformative for the country. It provides for 2 years of free community college, kind of on the other end of the education cycle. And it invests a lot in healthcare, making healthcare more affordable, making the Affordable Care Act more affordable. And both the jobs plan and the families plan also spend a lot of money on R&D because so many of the things we need to do to move into a more productive future will be done through research and development. So those two plans total right at $4 trillion. It is, if we pass it as a package, it will be basically twice as large as the largest bill that's ever been passed in American history in terms of dollars. But it will also be, I think, one of the things that will lay the foundation for us to have a truly futuristic approach to our society, create a much better future for our citizens, and make us competitive with other countries around the world. So that's where we are. It's a very, very exciting time. We're going to have a very busy second half of the year. Most of the stuff, if we get it done, we'll get done. We'll lay the foundation in July, and then hopefully we'll pass these bills in September or October. And that's the view here from Congress. And I'll just say one thing. The other thing that's so satisfying about working on these major pieces of legislation, it's true of the American Rescue Plan, and it will be true of the others, is that not one penny of the money that's spent in these bills or allocated by these bills goes to the richest 1%. This is money that all goes to support lower and moderate income families, the working families in this country who have been ignored or certainly put in. They have not been the top priority of policymakers for a long time, and these policies all put the emphasis where it deserves to be. So that's where we are, and I know all of you are hopeful that we can get a lot of this done, and I thank you for your enthusiasm, your support, and the work that you do every day. You all are doing the hard work in the trenches, and I greatly appreciate that.
Well, we certainly appreciate you and your time, and just in case that you have to move on to your next event, do we have questions for the congressperson? We've had a few in the chat. I've seen one question that is a little more partisan. KJC is a 501c3, and we're gonna hold off on that question.
All right.
But when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about roads and bridges that everyday families go across every day. And we're also talking, I'm really interested in this question, and we have someone actually from A Better Balance in DC to talk to us a little bit more about this. I'm really interested in this question of people as infrastructure and how these two ideas have come together, and that the administration is not only seeing an investment in people as infrastructure, but the infrastructure itself is the investment, and it's sort of a multi-layer approach. Is that how you see it?
Exactly. For instance, we could say the American Families Act calls for $225 billion for childcare. Now, you could spend $225 billion a lot of different ways. You could say, for instance, we're going to give everybody money to pay for their childcare. That's the wrong way to do it, because there's not enough capacity for everybody who has a child to get childcare. And if you just throw money at the individuals, the parents, then the cost of the child care that exists would go up. That's this inflationary effect. So you have to take that $225 billion and say, part of it needs to go to build capacity. What's capacity for childcare? Some of it's physical, but a lot of it's human. A lot of it is the caregivers who are going to provide the childcare, the educators, and so forth. That's the same as it is with elder care. It's the same as it is with community college. If you're going to give everybody 2 years of free community college, you better make sure there are enough classrooms and seats to accommodate them. Same with the early childhood education. So this is the kind of human investment that, again, Republicans don't think of that as infrastructure, but if you're a working parent and you're caring for not only children, but also maybe an elderly parent, the ability to provide care for the children and the parent, your parent, is every bit as important to getting you to work as a bridge or a road. And that's I think that's the different perspective that the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress now have brought to the whole notion of infrastructure.
Marcy, I think that touches upon your question. Marcy Timmerman with Mental Health America just asked, doesn't safe, reliable childcare and elder care help you get to work if you are still in the workforce? And that has to be the answer. We have a question from Ben Carter. We know some Kentuckians are still struggling with unemployment benefits. Is there any more unemployment assistance for states in any of these packages that are being considered?
Not right now. Currently the $300 a week supplement goes through September 30th. That was in the American Rescue Plan, and that's going to be one of the items that we'll need to discuss as to whether we want to extend that. There's a lot of pressure on it to be discontinued because there are a lot of people who think that $300 a month supplements what's keeping people from going back to work. There's not a lot of evidence that that's true. It may be a factor, but it's a small factor. Factors like the availability of childcare, the interest that many people have now in changing their career path and going back to school, getting a different perspective, are keeping them away. So, but that's something there are those who would want to extend that. That's probably going to be tough. I think no Republican's going to want to do it, and there are probably some Democrats who don't want to do that either, who recognizes that's an issue. What we're actually thinking about doing, which is a longer term approach to that, is to create a system of what we call automatic stabilizers. And these would be things that would automatically go into effect based on certain metrics that we would create. So it would be unemployment supplements, it would be SNAP, increases in SNAP, and some other things that would be, say, once the unemployment rate gets to a certain level, once recession comes, so forth, that these other things automatically go into place. And that's probably more likely the approach we'll take.
That's great. I know we've looked at some of that at the state level as well. Other questions for our congressman? If you want to stay on, Congressman, we have our organization is not one that just puts on flashy politicians to talk. We actually have some people who are going to talk about their jobs and what they do, and how investments in people such as what we're talking about with these pieces of legislation are going to affect them. So it's definitely a worthwhile conversation if you can stick around.
Good. Well, I'm going to stick around for a few minutes. I do have to depart in a little while, but let me just say one thing that I remember last year in the middle of the pandemic when I was on a call with some union people, and One of the people on the call was a guy named Greg, and Greg was worked in maintenance at Seneca High School. And I started thinking at that time that, here was a guy who, until the pandemic hit, would never have been part of nobody ever would have given Greg a second thought as to what he did in his job. But all of a sudden, when you're thinking about sending your kid back to school, and Greg is responsible for keeping your school sanitized and so forth, all of a sudden, Greg becomes a very, very important person. He becomes a critical employee. And of course, we saw that with truck drivers. We saw that with clerks in stores who were stocking grocery shelves. And there was, I think for a while, and I hope we haven't lost it, there was this sense that we really need to reevaluate the value of a lot of the work that people do in our society, because all of a sudden things that didn't seem so important to us are really, really critical. And I hope that we keep that in our minds as we move forward as to how we set, to the extent that policy can deal with that, we create policies that actually do reward people for the important work that they do in an appropriate way, and not just consider them almost, I don't want to say disposable, but certainly non-critical work, because so many of the people who got us through this pandemic were never compensated adequately for what they did.
Thank you again. And I'm showing my appreciation and clapping for you in the way we do that on Zoom these days is with these things.
Gotcha.
Thank you again so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
And now we're going to pass it to the head of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO, Bill Londrigan. Bill, did you like what you heard from the congressman? How does labor feel about these acts? Is it putting people back to work? How does this look for ordinary people?
Well, it looks fantastic for ordinary people. And before I say anything further, let me just thank Kentucky Equal Justice Center, Rich, his staff, you, Mackenzie, and of course, my favorite congressman of all time, John Yarmuth, who has voted for the PRO Act and co-sponsored the PRO Act. Thank you, John Yarmuth, for all of your support for working people and organized labor. We are always appreciative of that. Of course, we're glad to hear what Congressman John Yarmuth said. And when we think about infrastructure, he already alluded to some of the fact that this is a historical perspective on infrastructure. What made America great? The things that made America great was our investments in infrastructure was one of the great things. Of course, our dams and our highways and our bridges, our waterways, and the things that powered our country, our electrical grid. These things have been what transformed our country and our economy into the world power that we became. And unfortunately, people have forgotten and recognized the importance of maintaining this infrastructure, because like all things, things decay. They have effects over time, and they need to be maintained, but not only maintained, they need to be built and rebuilt, and things need to be put in place that are going to bring us into the future here. And of course, we all talk about this global economy and the competition that we're facing from places like China, and how advanced they are in their infrastructure investments, and how we're falling behind, and how we have voices in Washington that are talking against infrastructure investments and frowning on the investments that Congressman John Yarmuth has mentioned. We love the American Families Plan. We love the American Jobs Plan. Both of these represent investments in infrastructure that will create millions of good-paying union jobs. And that President Biden has stated that over and over again, that we are interested in creating good-paying union jobs through this major investment in infrastructure. But as Congressman Yarmouth already mentioned as well, this is also like social infrastructure, just like during the time with FDR, when we had the creation of Social Security and Medicare, when we outlawed child labor, when we created minimum wage laws. These were the things that uplifted people and created our middle class and our great economy. And this is the investment that we have to make again in order for us to move our families forward, to move our economy forward, to move our working class forward. And these things cannot be put on the back burner. John Yarmouth, the congressman, has mentioned the incredible amount of money that the Biden administration has proposed, and nothing short of this major great investment is going to suffice for us to get back on track here as a nation. Look we got one bridge down in Memphis that connects Memphis and Arkansas, where there's a huge major crack. And I'm sure that our friends from the building trades will recognize how important it is for us to maintain bridges. Now it's shut down for months upon months, and it's going to cost, millions and millions of dollars in transportation costs. And, these big corporations like Amazon, UPS, and all these logistics firms, they benefit so much from this great infrastructure. And they should be on board. Everybody should be on board trying to make sure that this country doesn't fall further behind in our investments in infrastructure, and that we actually do create the jobs of the future. We couple the American Families Plan with the American Jobs Plan with the PRO Act, and then we move America forward. And that's what we need to do, and we need to do it now. And so we need to raise our voices and make sure that our senators, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, know that Kentuckians need this investment. Now, just one little statistic that just almost blows your mind, that there are 1,033 bridges and 1,322 miles of highway in Kentucky in poor condition. That's incredible. The amount of infrastructure that needs to be in place for creating clean drinking water requires $8.2 billion of investments alone. So you can see there's an enormous demand out here for creating and improving our infrastructure and creating those great paying jobs that will lift people out of poverty and put our people back to work and create the society and the economy that we all are hoping for. So thank you, and I will respond to questions if necessary.
Thanks so much, Bill. You're an excellent spokesperson for working families. I'm looking for questions, but really, I think we're in a good place to pass it on right now. So we have 3 people who are really brave, really special, and really important part of tonight's program, who I want to give a chance to contribute. And they are, you've heard a little bit about, from sort of a top level view from the congressperson, what's in store, what our elected officials are discussing in terms of infrastructure, money. You've heard the details, but what does it mean for the people who we are investing in? What does it mean for someone going out and actually building these bridges? What does that job mean to them? What does that mean for their family? And that's what you're going to hear in this next part that is often lost in a lot of other discussions. So we have 3 brave people who are wanting to contribute to that discussion. And I want to start with Taiwan, because Taiwan Johnson is actually on his break. He works at a local hospital in Louisville, and I want to be sure he's able to enjoy some of his break, but also contribute to our discussion. So Taiwan, are you there? You can unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Hey, what did you think about tonight's discussion?
It was informative. I mean, it's pretty much what I expected. I mean, it sounded good.
So tell us about your job and what you do. I know you also have another job where you work in construction. Tell me what it's like to hear an elected official talking about investing in your work.
I mean, that boosts the morale up, and that, of course, it helps our families to be self-sufficient a little more, and then that to help, we can be involved more in the community also, as well as without being sufficient. And I mean, and it's always great to not have to depend on government assistance and everything, you know. And yeah, definitely boosts the morale when you're talking about infrastructure.
That's exactly right. Tell us a little bit more about your construction job, and you know, I tend to view it as, you know, any boost of our economy or any infusion of money into our economy, you know, no matter where it comes from, is good for construction jobs. So I'd like to hear what you think about that.
What I think about the boost of the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a trickle down effect for just the families, the economy. I mean, just help sharing economic value with everybody, you know, is major in all areas. I mean, it's just a morale boost. I mean, it depend on less on government assistance, you know, and it just keeps us going. With helping the infrastructure, it's important to everyone.
And you're not just someone who's affected by construction jobs and changes in the economy. You're also someone who drives on our roads and bridges on your way back from work. And Louisville's definitely a city that's affected by changes in our roads and bridges. I've certainly seen that over the years. So how does it feel to be thinking about, oh, I might not have to make more time just to get to work because, or I might not have to take care of a flat tire because it got punctured in a pothole? And how, you know, how does that feel like a good investment to you?
Oh, it's definitely good investments, especially from seeing the wear on the highways and bridges as it is now. It's definitely a plus.
Well, we'll let you carry on with your break, and we can't thank you enough for being on here for a few minutes and joining us. And I want to move on because I see Eric in the corner of my screen, and he's just been chomping at the bit to. I've seen him in the chat. He's ready to. He's got a lot to say to us, I think. So, Eric, you can unmute yourself and join us. I know you had. I saw your face. You really enjoyed the congressman's discussion.
I did. And thank you, Mackenzie, and hello everybody. Good evening to you all. I hope everybody's having a decent night and has been staying safe throughout all this. I think we're coming out on the rear end of it, so hopefully that'll be pretty good. But yeah, the congressman said something that I think it kind of just got said and went away. But something that I found very important was he said there was not a single penny in either of these two bills slated to go to the 1%. And to me, that's huge because, you know, as someone who follows what's going on, I have followed tax cuts for the wealthy, and I have been waiting for that to really trickle down the way they've been telling us it's supposed to, but I already knew it wasn't going to. We are no closer to infrastructure improvements than we were before these tax cuts. If anything, we ended up even further away. I myself, I represent Ironworkers Local 44 up in Northern Kentucky. We are based in Hebron, Kentucky. We're just like the airport. We have a Cincinnati name, but a Kentucky address. And a good chunk of my membership lives in Kentucky and commutes across the river to both Southern Indiana and Southern Ohio for work. And, you know, we can't wait for them to invest in our bridges anymore. We've been waiting for them to invest in our bridges. These bills, that's our money. That's our tax money. This is finally us investing in ourselves because it will pay high-paying union jobs to build bridges across rivers. It will pay high-paying union jobs to build bridges across ravines. It will pay high-paying union jobs to fix the roadways, to build the hospitals, to build new schools. And it's time. It's really time. I started my ironworking career in 1996, and the Brent Spence Bridge, which is kind of a famous bridge up here in Northern Kentucky. It's been a backdrop for many speeches over the course of its life. And it has been told, I was told in 1996 that it was nearing the end of its lifespan, that within 10 years it needed to be replaced. 25 years into my career now, and I'm still waiting for a bridge to replace the one that was finished 15 years ago. I'm eligible to retire in August of 2032. And I really hope that we are still not talking about replacing this bridge. And I really hope we're not talking about the memorial we have to have because of some catastrophic failure of this bridge. They're painting it right now. They're making it look nice, but it still needs replaced. And everybody knows it, and our membership, and not only the ironworkers, but all of the building trades, laborers, carpenters, you name it, will have work in this bill. This is not handouts. This is a bill that invests to pay that money out, which will then in turn be reinvested in the economy. That is how this problem gets fixed. We are talking about fixing a modern day problem with a modern day solution. And this is it, maybe it's not modern day, FDR, he had this idea a long time ago. It did pretty well, if I remember.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I want to turn really quickly to Jessica. Jessica, your two colleagues here have said a lot, and I hope you feel like they haven't taken all of the good comments away, but because I'm sure that you have a lot to say as well. Tell us about your job and what you do, and what an investment in the workforce, the economy, human infrastructure, and not just human infrastructure, but also roads and bridges and families means to you.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I apologize ahead of time if you all hear my old man dog bark, trying to get my attention while I'm on this. But I'm Jessica Ferris. I'm Vice President of Ask Me Local 2629. I work in Louisville at the local animal shelter. I've been there about 13 years. And what I can bring to this discussion is I myself have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So more on the family side of things versus the infrastructure part of it. I'm excited for what I hear, because definitely I'm a firm believer that America was built on the backs of the frontline workers, that's for sure. And an investment is needed into them. But at the same time, I would also like to encourage, those that are in the power to do so, is, a responsible investment, to where we're not setting ourselves up down the road to potential job loss or anything. I absolutely agree with them that, we definitely need to invest in the frontline workers. I'm one of those that I make just enough to not qualify for any kind of really government assistance, but at the same time, I make just a little to where I have lots of, debt with medical bills with 2 small children. The commuting every day, I have an hour drive pretty much to work every day, and then an hour drive back. So yeah, infrastructure is a huge part of that. And I am thankful that in Louisville, we finally got the 2 bridges. I will say that, because recently had my engine go out on the new bridge, and that probably would not have been as good of a situation had that happened on the old bridge. Thankfully, everything is okay. And I'm definitely excited, and I'm thankful for, the rescue plan and the steps that are being started to implement with this. I know for myself, I had with the, COVID ending the world, I had a scare with my 2-year-old possibly having COVID. And now I have a $1,300 bill that is due to pay for that. for him to be non-COVID, thankfully, and then just, get some ibuprofen $1,300 later. So I definitely think, the healthcare aspect and looking at the affordable healthcare and, realizing that we do need family-friendly workplaces. We need that investment, and I feel like that is really holding us back, compared to other locations and other places. So I'm very excited. I would definitely like to, learn more. I will be honest, with constantly working and constantly 2 kids, that takes up a good majority of my time. So, but I do appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And I think you know a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for, because you just did a really good job. And it's funny, you mentioned you might have a dog barking. I've got cats in the background as well, but you also work at an animal shelter, and investing in people and being sure that they have good jobs helps our furry friends as well. So thank you for all that you do working with the animals in our community as well. I told you all sort of when I asked the question to Congressman Yarmouth that I'm really interested in this sort of twofold approach of infrastructure as more than just roads and bridges. And the next contributor to our program here tonight believes that as well. We're really lucky to partner with an organization, A Better Balance. A Better Balance is an organization. They have offices in New York, Nashville, and DC. And so we've really been lucky in Kentucky to have an organization like A Better Balance so close by in Nashville to represent whether it's someone, a pregnancy discrimination related matter, or it's a advocacy for paid family leave and paid sick leave. A Better Balance does a great job on both fronts, litigating and advocating for our workforce as well, and are an excellent partner. So Sarah, I know that you've been listening to our discussion. Sarah's joining us from the DC office tonight. Sarah Brockman from A Better Balance. Welcome. And I think you've heard most of our discussion tonight about childcare as infrastructure. I know A Better Balance has got to be excited about that. You all have been working on this issue for some time. Tell us what's the latest in the states and around the country on paid sick leave, paid family leave, and being sure that our workforce can take care of their families when they get home from work, that they have a flexible workplace that's supportive of growing families and communities.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. And it's always so wonderful to partner with the Kentucky Equal Justice Center and with all of you on the call. Like Mackenzie said, A Better Balance, we're a legal advocacy organization, and we work to ensure that people and workers don't need to choose between caring for themselves and caring for their loved ones and their economic security. And we've been doing that for 15 years. And this is an incredibly exciting moment. The Congressman speaking about how infusions into our economy are infusions into families and into people has brought us to tears, really. And hearing President Biden talk about, this country needs a comprehensive 12-week paid family and medical leave program is a real moment, and has been thanks to the efforts of so many on this call and lifting up those workers. The same with supporting pregnant workers. Congressman, thank you for your recent vote on the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which is Kentucky was a huge driver of that bill, both in terms of its business support, in terms of its support from the delegation in Congress. And it's a really huge moment. And I think what's important to think about is that I think for many, many years, all of these issues have been very neglected. And I think the reason they've been so neglected is because people often think of childcare and paid family and medical leave as benefits or nice to haves, right? Those are just additional or extra kind of cherries on top. But what we know and what we've seen over the course of many decades is that these programs are integral to making our economy work. They are integral for gender equity. They're integral for racial justice. And why am I saying that? So let's take childcare, for instance, right? In the American Families Plan, we're talking about a critical investment in childcare. And let's remember too, when we're talking about these investments, it's not as though we've been making these investments consistently for the last 3 decades. These are new investments into childcare. These are new investments into a paid leave program. So it's not cumulative. And when you think about it that way, and you think about other areas where we've been spending for decades, this is a drop in the bucket, right? We're talking about a $28 trillion deficit. $425 billion is a drop in the bucket, really. And the $425 billion, and what I really liked about what the congressman said is that it's both giving money to families to afford childcare, and it's investing in the childcare economy. So the childcare workforce is predominantly women. And when I say predominantly, I mean 95% plus women, and disproportionately women of color. And they are paid, I mean, just horrific wages for the kinds of work that they do. I mean, they are taking care of our future. They are taking care of our most precious commodity, which is our young children. And we pay abysmal wages for childcare workers when they're doing some of the most difficult, some of the most important work. And so what this infusion of money would do is to invest in training and bettering the wages of the childcare workforce. It would make sure that low to moderate income families are not paying more than 7% of their income towards childcare. We hear from workers at A Better Balance. We run a national helpline. So we hear from workers in Kentucky. We're hearing on the ground, workers are spending, 50% of their income on their childcare. And it's just not financially possible for them to both do this work and provide childcare, let alone that they live in a childcare desert. So they don't even have accessible quality childcare to do that. So the investment as well is also in building new childcare facilities. It's in investing to make sure that pre-K can be free. We've already seen some states working towards investments in universal pre-K. This would do this on a national level, which is hugely important. But there are two sides of this coin, right? We need childcare. We worked with one woman during the pandemic. She had no childcare, and she asked if she could bring her child to work with her, and her employer, she's a low-wage worker, and they said, this isn't a daycare, you can't bring your child to work. Well, it was a young child and she had no childcare, so she was forced to leave her job because there was no accessible childcare for her. So that's the position that we are putting so many families into day in and day out. So that's on childcare. But there are so many workers for whom they want to be providing the care to their families, right? They have a baby and they need to take time off because a woman needs to recover from childbirth, or a father wants to take time to bond with his new child, or someone's providing elder care to a loved one, or you have your own care needs, right? We all have our own medical needs, or at some point we all have people we love in this world that we need to provide care for. And what's really amazing about the American Families Plan is that what it would cover is 12 weeks of time off for caring for your own medical needs, bonding with a new child, caring for a seriously ill loved one. And at A Better Balance, we also work to expand what family means, right? A lot of times in our laws, for instance, the FMLA, you can only take time to care for your parent, your child, or spouse. So even siblings aren't covered. Siblings, which are often our most long-term, closest relationships, or people for whom they might not have a connection to their biological family, but their roommate and their best friend is their family, that the American Families Plan is recognizing that family looks very different in modern day America and in the 21st century, and that we need to account for that. And the last piece I'll say is that what's really important, and I think what we also need to be lifting up with paid leave, is that we're talking about leave, right? That you should be able to leave your job and come back to your job. And what's really important in this program is job protection, that when you take that time, that you know that you have a job to come back to. And I think I'll just say this, and I think when folks are talking with their congressional representatives, with senators, to make sure to lift up job protection, it's not always guaranteed that it'll make it in there. There may be even some questions as to whether it can make it into a budget reconciliation, because I'm sure, as you've all heard, there's a parliamentarian who kind of makes or breaks decisions about what can make it in there. But even posing the question to the parliamentarian is critical, because it will further legislation, even if something has to move legislatively and not through reconciliation. And I think the other thing to remember about both of these, both the childcare and the paid family and medical leave, is that the American Families Plan is a floor, not a ceiling, right? So there are already proposals. Senator Warren has a proposal out there for a $700 billion investment into childcare. And the Ways and Means Committee and Chairman Neal has a proposal on paid family and medical leave that the budget would be far higher than $225 billion. And so the American Families Plan is remarkable. It is something we strongly support, but I think it's important to remember that as this process goes on, as politics start getting infused into the conversation, that the American Families Plan and the American Jobs Plan are floors. They are not ceilings. And so our legislators and Chairman Yarmouth is head of the House Budget Committee. He has a tremendous amount of power in really shepherding this conversation, is that we are encouraging that when we think about this, and I want to check out the Stephanie Kelton book. I'm going to order it right away after this. But that for so long we've been neglecting this critical form of infrastructure, that we have to look at this as just the starting point and not the ending point, even though they feel like really large numbers. But at the end of the day, who we're investing in is that worker that had to leave her job because she didn't have childcare. We're investing in the person who had to make the choice to leave their job or was fired because they had a family member who had COVID and they had 0 time off, right? We haven't even discussed sick leave, right? There is no national standard for paid sick leave in this country, and need to pass a Healthy Families Act because we just went through a pandemic without any national standard of paid sick leave. So there's so much to do. There's so many ways we can support workers. It's really heartening to be on this call with you all. Thank you for inviting us and having this discussion. I know we're a tiny bit past 4, so and I'm sorry, I'm on West Coast time at the moment, actually, which is why my background looks a lot nicer than DC right now, because you don't want to be outside in what feels like a steam sauna at this point. But I'll turn it over to Mackenzie, and thank you again.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. That was a really important piece, and I'm glad you were able to join us. So I think it was Jessica who said during our discussion, she said, I don't know. I watch the news, but I don't know what's in the details of all these plans. I'm working and raising my kids, and I think that's most people, right? So I think if you joined our discussion, and I hope you appreciate that we tried to do some of the work for you, right? We brought our elected officials, we brought policy experts, we brought people who are going to be affected by this. We had an open forum for people to just communicate their ideas and their positions and give us some extra information. And I think we learned this isn't just about roads and bridges, right? Their infrastructure is a lot more than that. And our current administration is looking at it differently than that. And so I hope you were able tonight to get a full picture of, what might be coming in the next few months. I hope you got excited about some parts of it. And I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, and we need to give a lot of thank yous tonight. We especially are thankful for Jessica, Eric, and Taiwan who joined us tonight. They just got off work. They're working, they're cooking dinner, doing what they need to for their families. We had Congressman Yarmouth join us. Sarah, thanks for joining us from the West Coast. You have a full evening ahead, and I want to be sure everyone else has a chance to move along with their evening as well. Thanks to Bill Londrigan and our friends at the Kentucky State AFL-CIO. They were able to help us get people like Jessica, who is a union worker, Eric's a union worker, Taiwan's a union construction worker, And, unions have a lot of protections. And for union people to get on calls like this and on behalf of people like KEJC represents who do not have those same union protections, I think is really, really meaningful, because we work for those same protections for everyone every day. And we really appreciate the perspective of people like you all, because we're working for good jobs and high wages for everyone. And I know you care about that too, because you've been a beneficiary of that. I definitely want to thank my colleagues who work to present this program for you tonight. Rich Eccles, our executive director. Miranda Brown works with the Workers' Rights Project. Ben Carter is our supervising attorney, so I want to give them a special shout out. I think Miranda mentioned, and I mentioned before, we're a multi-level, multi-issue poverty level center. So I know there was stuff that came out about maybe immigration and healthcare, and those are big parts of our discussion. And it's important to us because those are issues that we cover at KEJC as well. We have attorney representatives willing to answer questions and provide services for you on all sorts of matters. So it's not just about workers, it's not just about infrastructure, but that's definitely what our program was about tonight. So again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who participated, everyone who joined. I saw a lot of familiar faces, and in the post-COVID world, there were some faces I hadn't seen in a while that I was really happy to see, even if it was just virtually. So thank you all again, and have a great evening.